Alright, so here are the notes for section 2.6, and it's going to be lots of two-step equations, and then there's going to be a couple more that actually have more than two steps, but they're not so bad once you simplify them down a little bit. Okay, so before we get started, I'd like to remind you of something called the distributive property. And some of you might not have seen this for a long time. And what this is this is a property that relates multiplication to addition and subtraction. So what you do is you take the number out in front of the parentheses and you multiply it to everything inside the parentheses. Okay, so this is going to be 5 times x. I'm going to use a little dot for multiplication, plus 5 times 3. Okay, if you don't need to write this step, then you don't have to when you're solving your equations, but I'm just going to write it out for now. So 5 times x plus 5 times 3, everything inside gets multiplied by the number on the outside. And then we work that out a little bit. 5 times x, remember we write that 5x plus, and 5 times 3 is 15. Okay, so what we did is we took everything in here, multiplied it by 5, and we got that. Okay, here's another one, except instead of multiplying by 5, we're going to multiply by a negative 3, but it's the same thing. And this one, I'm just going to write the answer down. Okay, so negative 3 times m is negative 3m. And now this is where it gets a tiny bit tricky, and negative 3 times negative 4 is positive 12. Multiply everything in here by negative 3. Negative 3 times m is negative 3m. Negative 3 times negative 4 is positive 12. Okay, here's another one, and then we'll do some equations. Okay, so we're going to multiply everything in here by negative 8. Okay, negative 8 times y is negative 8y. And negative 8 times positive 2, that's a negative, and negative times a positive is a negative. So negative 8 times positive 2 is negative 16. Okay, everything inside got multiplied by negative 8, and we get that. Okay, that'll become necessary later when we start solving some of the other equations on the back part of this assignment. But here's the first couple. They're just two-step equations, but instead of whole numbers, we've got some decimals to deal with. Same thing though, we're going to solve them exactly the same way. Okay, undo the adding or subtracting first. Here, so I have adding 2.5. I'm going to undo that by subtracting 2.5 from both sides. Okay, if you want to line up the decimals and just add them right here, that's a great idea. And that's what I'm going to do. Okay, be careful with the signs. Okay, I'm going to add a 0 here. So remember, they're both negative, so what ends up happening is we add them up and keep the sign. Okay, so negative 1.43 plus negative 2.5, or 2.50, is going to be negative 3.93. Okay, 3 plus 0 is 3, 4 plus 5 is 9, negative 1 and negative 2 makes negative 3. Again, this cancels out over here. This makes 0. So what's left is negative 3y. Okay, so to get y by itself, I'm going to now divide both sides by negative 3. And that's kind of nice because a negative divided by a negative is a positive. Okay, so now we got to work that out. I might have to do a little long division here, so let me do that on the side. So I've got 3.93 divided by 3. Decimal point just goes straight up. 3 goes into 3 once. 3 goes into 9 3 times. And a 3 left at the end there. So 3 goes into 3 once. And I'm done. I don't have to worry about adding any more zeros and having more decimal places in my answer, fortunately. Okay, so I get y equal to 1.31. Again, it's positive because a negative divided by negative is a positive. Okay, here's another one here. A little messy, sorry about that, but that is a negative 5.5 plus 1.1x equals 8.25. Okay, so to clear out this negative 5.5, we're going to add 5.5. to both sides of the equal sign. Okay, this makes 0 over here, so I'm left with 1.1x equals, let's see, if I put a 0 down here, I've already got my decimals kind of lined up. I'm just going to add them up. 5 and 0 is 5, 2 and 5 is 7, and 8 and 5 is 13. So, oops, 13.75. Alrighty, eventually you'll be able to use a calculator. But for now, I'm going to have you do this by hand. Okay, so we got some long division until we practice it a few more times, and then soon it'll be calculator time. Okay, so 1.1 into 13.75. Okay, remember I have a decimal here, so I got to move it over one place to get a whole number, and I'm going to do the same here. So now the decimals between the 7 and the 5, move it straight up, and then we're going to just do our long division. Thinking of this as 11, how many 11s go into 1? Well, nothing, but how many 11s go into 13? Well, one of them does. Okay, minus 11. 13 minus 11 is 2. Drop down the 7. Okay, remember, don't worry about the decimals anymore. We just moved it straight up into our answer. How many 11s go into 27? Well, that's 2. And that's 22. 11 times 2. So take away those, and I get 5. Drop down this 5. And that's not so bad. How many 11s go into 55? Well, 5 of them do, because 5 times 11 is 55. And I'm done. Okay, so I guess I forgot to write dividing by 1.1 here. So I divided both sides by 1.1. And doing that, I got 12.5 as my answer. Okay, so add 5.5 to both sides to cancel that out. Then you get to here. And then you solve that by dividing both sides by 1.1. Do a little work on the side, and you get 12.5. All right, so the next step, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do equations with more than 2 steps. Okay, and that might involve the distributive property, as you can see down here. So this one actually still only has 2 steps, and I'll explain that in a minute. But what we're going to do is we're going to combine all the variable terms first. Before we do any solving, we want to get all the variables clumped together in one term. And you may need to use a distributive property to solve. You will notice when to do that when you have parentheses with a number outside like that. Neither of these two do you need to use a distributive property to solve them. Okay, so 8 minus 10m is 40. So like I said, I'm going to combine these guys first. So 8m's minus 10m's is negative 2m equal to 40. Okay. So combine the variable terms. You just add the numbers, or in this case, subtract the numbers in front. You're just combining them together into one term. Okay, 8 minus 10 is negative 2. Alright, so negative 2m is 40. So now to solve that, I'm going to divide both sides by negative 2. And 40 divided by negative 2 is negative 20. So this is cancel out. We get 1m over there, and 40 divided by 2 is negative 20. Okay, this one looks a little crazy, but it's not. It's just the same thing. It's just got 3 variable terms this time. So we're going to combine all those first. Okay, just going down the line, negative 10 and negative 3. Well, that makes 13, negative 13. Okay, negative 10 and negative 3 is negative 13. Plus positive 8 is going to be negative 5x. This side's 145. Okay, negative 10 and negative 3 is negative 13. Plus 8 is negative 5. So you really got to start getting quick with your positive and negatives when you're doing these. Okay, so negative 5x is positive 145. Again, we'll just solve that by dividing by negative 5. Okay, negative 5 divided by negative 5 is 1, so over there I just get 1x. And 145 divided by negative 5, you may need to do long division, but I know the answer is going to be 29. or in this case negative 29, because I have a positive divided by a negative. So 145 divided by 5 is 29. So 145 divided by negative 5 makes negative 29. Okay, combine the variables first. And then all you got to do is divide both sides by whatever the number that's left in front of the x to figure out your answer. Okay, so here's the one with the distributive property. So we're going to multiply everything. There's another way to solve this, but I'm not going to show you that yet. I'm going to just have you apply the distributive property. Okay, so we're going to multiply everything in the parentheses by the number on the outside, which is negative 5. Okay, negative 5 times y is negative 5. Negative 5 and positive, I forgot the y, sorry, negative 5 times y is negative 5y. Negative 5 times positive 4 is negative 20 equal to 15. Okay, now we'll just solve it like we've been doing. Undo the subtraction first by adding 20 to both sides. Okay, and we have a 0 here. Negative 20 plus 20 makes nothing, so you're left with negative 5y equal to 35. And then we will divide both sides by negative 5 to get our answer. Negative 5 divided by negative 5 is 1, so we have 1y on the left side. 35 divided by negative 5 is negative 7. Okay, these get a little tricky, and they will only get more and more tricky the older you get and the more math you take. But hopefully this makes some sense, so practice them, try them. Don't forget to check the odd answers in the back of the book and make sure you're getting them right. And please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.